Let's talk about the single biggest land deal in American history. I mean, this was a moment that didn't just redraw the map, it completely changed the entire destiny of a brand new nation.
So, how does that even happen? How does a young, kind of scrappy nation, basically surrounded by huge European powers, just double its size, seemingly overnight? Well, that is the huge question we are going to unpack right here.
And here's our roadmap. First, we'll look at the massive problem the US was facing. Then, we get to the shocking offer that changed everything. We'll explore President Jefferson's really tough decision, see the incredible results of that choice, and finally, we have to look at the complicated, hidden costs of this whole thing. Okay, so first up, let's set the stage. To really get how big this deal was, you have to understand just how shaky the country's position was. Its entire economic survival was, and I'm not exaggerating, hanging by a thread. Think about it. In the early 1800s, America was totally boxed in. To the west wasn't some empty wilderness. It was a massive territory controlled by Napoleonic France, one of the most powerful empires on the planet. This wasn't just a neighbor. It was a giant wall that could have stopped America's growth dead in its tracks. And right at the heart of this problem was one thing: the Mississippi River. For all the farmers out west, this was their economic superhighway. All their crops, all their goods had to float down this one river and go through one single port, New Orleans. And that meant whoever controlled New Orleans had a literal chokehold on the entire American economy. And this brings us to the moment where the story just flips completely on its head. The Americans went to France with a very small, very specific goal, but what they got offered was something beyond anyone's wildest imagination. So President Thomas Jefferson, he knew he had to get control of that port. He sends his diplomats over to Paris with a really clear mission. Guys, just buy New Orleans. That's it. Maybe a little bit of the land around it, but the focus was the city. But when the Americans get there and make their case, Napoleon's people come back with this just stunning counteroffer. They basically said, forget the city. How would you like to buy the whole thing? The entire Louisiana territory. It's like going to buy a single-family house and being offered half the state. Just like that, this little negotiation becomes a continent-sized deal. So you gotta ask, why the sudden fire sale? Well, Napoleon wasn't being nice. He was being practical. He was completely desperate for cash to fund his wars all over Europe. Plus, a huge and successful slave revolt in Haiti had totally wrecked his plans for a big French empire in North America. He looked at this giant piece of land so far away and decided, you know what? Cold, hard cash is a lot more useful to me right now. But this unbelievable offer actually created a huge problem back home for President Jefferson. It wasn't just a political headache, this was a personal crisis that went against everything he said he believed in. See, to get Jefferson's dilemma, you have to know his core philosophy. He was a huge believer in a strict reading of the Constitution. For him, if the rule book didn't spell out word for word that the government could do something, then it couldn't. Simple as that. And that was the problem. You can read the Constitution forwards and backwards, and nowhere, absolutely nowhere, does it say the president can just go out and buy a massive chunk of another country. So what do? Do you stick to your principles, or do you grab this opportunity that will never, ever come again? Well, in the end, practical thinking won out. Jefferson took a massive gamble. He pushed his constitutional worries to the side because he knew this deal was just too good for the country to pass up. He had to act, and boy, was that choice a big one. So Jefferson rolls the dice. The deal gets done. Now let's look at the absolutely mind-boggling results of that decision. The final price? $15 million. Now, that might not sound like a lot today, but back in 1803, that was a gigantic sum of money, a huge chunk of the entire national budget. It was a fortune. But the real question isn't the total price tag. The real question is, what did they actually get for all that cash? What's the price per unit when you're building a continental nation? It came out to about 3 cents an acre. Just let that sink in for a second. 3 cents an acre. I think it's safe to say that this is, without a doubt, one of the greatest real estate deals in the history of the world. And the result? It was breathtaking. With just the stroke of a pen, the United States of America doubled in size. Just boom. This one deal locked down the Mississippi River and kicked off the nation's unstoppable expansion to the west. But the story doesn't stop there. Because this incredible opportunity, this amazing story of growth and progress, it had a much darker side. It came with huge and often tragic hidden costs.
And it is so important to remember that this westward expansion, this idea of manifest destiny, it was not a simple heroic story. For a whole lot of people, it was a story of conflict, of being pushed aside, and it sparked a deep struggle for the very soul of the nation.
First off, the land wasn't empty. The purchase led directly to the forced removal of countless Native American tribes from the lands their ancestors have lived on for generations. It also poured gasoline on the fire of the country's biggest problem, slavery. As every new territory was carved out, the furious debate about whether it would be a free state or a slave state grew louder and louder, a fight that would eventually tear the nation apart in the Civil War. The Louisiana Purchase was so much more than a land deal. It was a presidential gamble, a brilliant geopolitical move, and it was something that fueled both incredible opportunity and terrible conflict. It's just a powerful reminder of how one single decision can echo through history, reshaping the world. And it kind of leaves you with a big question, right? What choices are we making today that are going to define the world of tomorrow?